right, we are back again with Brad from Off the Rails on YouTube. First thing I want to talk about here, this shirt you're wearing. Seaboard Razorback,
Yes.
raring to go. Now, I thought this was like a high school football team or something. What you say this is train related? How so?
Well, down in Florida, where this is located, we had three major railroads. We had Atlantic Coast Line, we had Florida East Coast Railroad, and we also had Seaboard. Seaboard Airlines basically is the way it was originally introduced, but Seaboard Railroad, Coastal Railroad. Seaboard and Raring to Go basically was their freight logo, and all the railroads wanted to really move merchandise quickly.
Is that why there's a Razorback? They think Razorbacks are fast? Is that for the purpose
If
of
you tried to catch one, you'd understand that they are quick.
It's a cool looking shirt. Anyway, train or not. All right, now we're supposed to go into a rare train or one of Brad's favorites here, but obviously you can see Brad cannot pick one thing. He has to get a whole array of things, which I'm assuming are related, connected, which is why they are together.
Correct.
So why did we pick these particular trains here?
Well, the reason for this primarily is due to the fact that they were some of the first trains that were brought out by Lionel. They date to 1901. This particular engine, number 8E, that's 8E on the Talon. This one is the dark green, which at this point in time, at least according to some of the books that you can purchase.
I see these books here. What are these things?
It's a value. Basically, it gives you the history.
Oh, we're selling. We're selling today?
No, I'm not selling today.
Okay.
But it does give you an idea of the corresponding number to the cars.
Okay.
And this began...
Let me see, get that in there.
There you go.
It says number 8.
Correct.
Okay, and what's the front say? It says a Lionel.
Yes.
Turn it a little towards me.
Mm-hmm.
Like this. Turn it, yeah, so I can see the side view.
Sure.
Number 8, Lionel. I don't know what that little plate says.
Well, okay. They had a lot of brass in here.
Yeah.
And Lionel, when they first started, they used a lot of brass and copper, as well as all of the tin. All these are tin type. This happens to date back to 1901. Number 8 is one of the more valuable ones that you can find now, if you can find them. It's rated in the book at this point, depending upon condition. Condition of this is between, I would say, really quite good, all the way down to, and of course the age now, we're talking about 114 years.
Wow.
Old on this piece.
And that's made out of, I know you said brass, but what is the majority of it? Is that tin?
Well, you've got tin, correct.
Okay.
You have some brass mixed in. There will be copper in other areas. But some of the details, some of the interesting parts on the wheels, that was where they really began. And you'll find that type of wheel configuration. Okay. And if you look at under the car as well, you'll see the motor and the large size wheel. This is what they call 1 gauge. And this is how Lionel began. And of course it became rare due to age, but this was primarily purchased by individuals who had very large homes. I would say to the rich side, because it took a lot of track to be able to run this type of 1 gauge. But it was also fascinating because this is where Lionel started. And this was one of the first kits that they came out with.
Really?
One of the first trains. And if you look in the book itself, it'll give you the history. So if you take a look at number 8, right now it's valued between $3,000 and $5,400 based on condition.
Excellent.
So it's one of the oldest ones, 1901. And so I'm very proud to have this in my collection.
You're ready to sell. Excellent.
And, no, nothing's selling at the moment. And here is the secondary that they came out with.
It looks like the same, like a different colorway. I think the windows are different. Is that right?
Yes. And so this one is like a 1904 from what I've featured. And
What's
this
the
one
number?
has 8E.
E. Okay.
Correct.
What's the E mean? Anything?
I do not know. That's just what Lionel put on
Just
there.
a model number, I guess.
I think what they were trying to do is show the difference between an 8, which was like a 1901,
Okay.
and then a later model, about 1903, 1904, and it's the same style,
Yeah.
different color. And interestingly enough, on the older value rated books on Lionel, different color had different value. And what I'm assuming, and I do not know this to be a fact, but I'm assuming that they made various numbers of different colors. And I think they were trying at that time to figure out what would actually be marketable. Perhaps people wanted different colors.
So that was, so the other one was 3,000. What's this one around?
They're looking at, in this condition, about $350 to $500.
What? Why?
Well,
Nobody likes brown?
it's possible because other colors have a little higher, but I think that
Can
the
we
reason
just
for
paint
the
it green and
that-
just make it 3,000?
well, no, you can't paint it. These are all originals; they have not been repainted. But I think the fact is that this was the first.
And it doesn't have the E. Right. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
this
well,
was the first.
anything first run, first
Right.
production is gonna
That's
hold
it,
the most
exactly.
value. Makes sense.
So I bought this and added it to my collection about 23 years ago, and I was at that time I was fortunate enough to find these items, and of course I had to buy them individually. It didn't come as a set,
Right.
and I have I've only seen a couple of the original boxes that are available at some train shows, but I've been unable to really get the original boxes for these are rather old. And I don't value it based on the box as much as
Right.
most collectors do.
Right.
Of
What's
course,
some of these other guys then? What's this?
Okay.
What's this guy here?
okay, on this
It
particular
kind of looks
picture,
like the same shape, but except doesn't have like the stuff on the top.
correct. Okay, so what you have here is you have a baggage car. Okay,
Okay.
so when Lionel made these, they made them as passenger sets or freight set. So this would be the passenger set. This would be your baggage car. So when people were traveling, they'd have a baggage car. A lot of times they'd have. Wait a minute, this
I don't
one?
know where my hand is. I'm trying to get
Sorry.
what it says on
Yeah,
it.
so you can see it.
Says-
Right.
Still can't read that. Railway mail. Okay.
Correct. Okay. So railroad
332.
REA
Okay.
was not around at that time, but the actual the passenger trains always carried one of these for baggage and mail.
Okay.
Passenger trains normally got to their destination quicker, so they were the choice to provide mail service.
Okay.
And then you had, in addition to that, you'd have to have yet another mail service car.
That one I can clearly read.
Yeah.
Railway. That one, yeah, has a little different. If you look at the windows on this guy,
Well, right. This is
it's a
older.
little different, and it says it says Lionel Lines on that one. Also.
Correct.
Oh, so the door's open.
Mm-hmm.
Get my hand in there.
Okay.
Is there anything inside? No.
No, no, it's already been
All
delivered.
the mail is gone.
It's out of
all
service at the
out of
moment.
service.
It's
Okay.
a museum sort of thing. But these are in very, very good condition.
Yeah, it looks good.
And for their age, on this
How
side,
old
you'll
is
see
that
it
guy?
a little bit better. You can say that perhaps a little bit
Yeah.
better. Lionel used to rubber stamp some of their name on the side of the tin. And they,
Looks like somebody tried to break in this window over here.
yeah,
What happened to that?
well, in actuality, that's just basically no paint in there. It just doesn't have any thing on the inside. But anyway, condition-wise, this is in great condition. Also over here, yet another car. This is would be the actual observation car. All right, so
Observation, what's that mean?
well here in
They
a
just sit
regular
there and look
passenger
out- do they
setup,
look
and I
out the
don't.
windows? They just sit
Correct.
out the window.
This would be kind of like a lounge and observation
Oh,
car.
okay.
I don't have additional ones of these. I think they were originally in production. They came
Got
out
like
with
a little balcony on the back.
correct. That would be the end part of the.
Will people allowed
the
out on there and drinking
At
and
one
whatever?
yes, and that became actually later on in the years in the 1940s, in presidential campaigns, they would have
stand
go to whistle stops, and the president would stand out here, or the individual who was running for the presidency, and they would give their campaign information at that
really?
point. And that became very popular because you could go by rail and see a lot of people travel all over the country. This side of it, you're going to see where they actually had stamped on this side. So these are really in mint condition for their age. So I was happy to find these. They've been around a long time. This 1 gauge, you don't see a lot of it until MTH came along and started to do tin type replacements from Lionel. But these are the actual ones, so I'm very happy to have these.
That are all tin. So they don't do them in tin anymore, basically, then. Is that it?
No, they do not. Okay. And then I talked about the passenger side of it. They had the freight side of it.
Okay.
And the same types of detail with the copper. You have the copper, your brake wheels.
What does that say on it? Lionel ventilated? Hold on. Ventilated refrigerator. Is that, what did they put in there? Is that just like...
Well, they would put milk and perishables.
Okay.
And so these cars eventually became...
Why is the door so small?
Well, it's basically, these are little latch type doors, and they'll open up to the inside.
It's not going to spill milk out, is it?
Well, you remember, these, again, became models, and they weren't... I'll have to work on that.
That's all right.
It's just old. But, like me.
I was just wondering, I would have thought they would have had a big slide door, I guess.
Oh, here we go. There we go.
Didn't,
well, they did go to that.
Did they
okay,
too
so
hard to seal so the air wouldn't get out or something? Or
okay, what happened was, on these, from what I understand, they would pack these with ice in a wooden bunker at each end of the car.
Okay.
As time went on, cars developed, and on the layout I have an ice station where cars would come in and they would put large blocks of ice into the rooftop.
The top would open?
Say again?
The top would open?
Yes, they had a hatch all
okay.
4 corners, and you would go to a ice depot. They would put block ice in the end of the car from the roof. Okay. On these, because they were so old, they would actually just pack the car with ice block and then put whatever consumables would be in there. So this would be basically, if you have refrigerated service, that was pretty much non-stop because that had priority on the rail. But remember, this is what modelers or a model company like Lionel fashioned back in the early 1900s. Okay. They had not advanced to where they are today, where you have an awful lot of different styles. But so this is what they're doing. So you had a couple of the refrigerated type cars. We also carried a lot of oil as well. So here you have an example of that.
Oh, Sunco, I remember that. Lionel lines. Five.
Again, with a lot of the metal features as well.
Brass.
Some of it's brass, some of it's copper, some of it's stamped metal.
Really? They put copper in there.
Well, that's what made these really attractive.
What's the other side look like? The other side of the other side any different?
Nope. Okay. Pretty much the same.
And
then you still have your number plates in here as well.
What's the little wheels? Is that the detachment?
Brake wheel. Okay.
Oh, that's the brake.
Those are the brakes. So they would be manually applied. And that was the way they would handle the cars back. We still have brake wheels on modern cars as well.
Oh, really?
Yep. And so another feature, which is very popular, gondola. Here's the gondola car.
Gondola? Isn't that what goes, in
Venice?
And you sit in there and they take you and they sing under the bridge. And
yeah, but the funny
work
part,
with this.
right? Funny part. The way you get close to that would be roll this car onto a bridge, okay? But you're going to have a long and very strong arm to get down and push this along on the rail. But this came in handy for utility items, drums, rock. Whatever, coal in some cases.
A modern day dumpster on wheels.
Correct. Well, that's true. And you'll notice for a minute also, we didn't have knuckle couplers back then. Okay.
What's that?
This is how you couple a car to a car in front of a car and back of this car. So you make up a string of rail cars. So coupling them together, this was the older style where it actually had a little lever arm that came up. And then a hook from the prior or the next car would fit into it, and then this would come back down and then hold the 2 cars together so you can form a train.
Or something like that?
Well, it's what they worked with at the time. Couplers were always dangerous, Railroading itself is a pretty dangerous operation, especially in the olden days when they had a pin that you had a knuckle that would open up and then it would close and then you have to put a pin in it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Right, it advanced from that point forward. Some of the things that went along with these cars, Lionel came out with, once again, keeping with all the type of copper, silver, brass, all the type metal. Everything was done in metal. This is
that a bridge?
That's a bridge, and this track for this 1 gauge is super large. I mean, that has, you know, compared to others, it's very large. And so the
what scale trains go on this stuff?
1 scale.
Is that what these are?
Yes.
1 to 1?
1 scale.
Or 1 scale?
Well, no, they didn't break it down by
O scales and stuff yet?
Yeah, O scale came about later on. So you have 1 scale, then you have O scale, HO, N scale, and then there are a couple of HON3 and so forth. But this is the largest scale that Lionel came out with. They came out with it first. I didn't really get a lot of history on why they decided to come first, but I think it was because of the size of it. And it was easier. They thought at that time kids could handle this stuff a little bit better. But in actuality, the adults ended up putting the track together because this is pretty heavy stuff. But that's how they began their process of trains. And then, of course, as you went along, it wasn't until they call all this pre-war, and pre-war would be World War I, okay, and pre-war would be World War II. So in those various areas, they continued to produce more and more railroad equipment and more structures to use on the railroad, and of course the track. And the original transformers that they had back in the early 1900s for this set perhaps, actually plugged into an overhead light. And the wire came down into the transformer, and they have, if you'll look at the older ones, there's a few around, but electrical wires were actually fabric wrapped, and they would take a socket out of a light bulb.
So it had a socket end?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
And it would go into the overhead light, wire would come down, and they would have your controls to run the trains.
I remember seeing pictures with lines coming down. I was wondering what's that one? The one there.
Lumber.
Yeah.
Okay, lumber car, flat car for carrying lumber and timber product, which was a big revenue piece for some of the lines that were carried at the time in the real railroading industry. But once again, all of the same types of metal, and even to the trucks themselves, what rides the rails. These are all basically your hot spots, or where the bearings were on. So they duplicated that look. All right. And of course, as time went on with the railroad, the models became more realistic as the railroads began to progress. So what you're seeing here is what really started out with the Lionel lines, 1901.
And that wood is tin on there too?
Say again?
That's tin also, the wood like stuff?
No, that's actually wood.
Oh, that is wood. Okay.
Right, and it was scribed out to look like planks and so forth.
Okay.
So that part of it. So basically, that's where you began if you were living in 1901, United States, 1901 to about 1909. So for about 8 years, this is what kids would have. And when you look at the older boxes, you know, you see the kid with the rather large trains. I mean, if you look at the size of these, and then you look at what we're looking at on O scale, it's a huge jump when you see the difference. O scale to 1 scale. So 1 scale, O scale, HO, N, and further down, and HON3 or ON3, and then you had American Flyer as well that came into the game. But Gilbert Company, American Flyer, they entered into the market prior to the war, along with Marx, Lionel, and a couple of the other companies that were out there and competing for attention to build their product line.
So these were the earliest trains you could get, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. This is where it all began, and this is where Lionel hit the rail. And but you can see there's an awful lot that goes into these, and they were very attractive. To this day, some of the beauty of the older trains, and I have some from the 1930s and 40s, they carried over the use of copper, brass, some aluminum stamped metal as well. So it was very popular, and they did it with the railroad cars. We'll look at that another day.
Yeah.
But you'll see the progression. This is where it all began. And then it began. Now, one of the interesting things is, generally speaking, the normal household in the early 1900s would not accommodate the size of these trains.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
They are. And so initially, this is my take, and I'm not sure that was the marketing idea, but initially I think this was generally bought by wealthy families that had significantly large homes. And this is why I think that the size was one thing, but the larger homes generally had spacious areas, parlors and things like that that they could work with. But it was not, it was kind of a target market. And in order to expand the trains, they had to get it down to a point where it's more affordable. These were expensive at the time that they came out, not compared to today's prices, but they were expensive. And it did not really, it was not attainable by a large number of kids and families because of the expense.
And considering this was sold to wealthy families, I'm assuming that's why a lot of this stuff was lost, because they probably bought it, got, oh, we have too many, it's too big, and tossed it and just bought the newer ones, and the older ones are harder and harder to find because of that, I'm assuming.
Well, that,
were these lower runs then? Did they make lower quantities of these then, I'm assuming then, if that's what their market they were going for?
I don't know. That's exactly right. I'm going to assume that because they were not actually mass marketed.
Yeah.
I think this was more to get an idea, is it saleable? Would people buy it? What's the reaction of the child to this size train? Do they like it? It was kind of a test market.
Well, obviously then, because if they then started making ones that were more affordable, then they actually these must have done very well, and they're like, we need to make more, but we need to make them at a better price point so everyone can get them.
Exactly. And so I really think that the reaction of the child, you got to remember that railroads back in the 1900s to the late 1880s, 1890s, mostly steam, all right? Most of these portray something that is more of electrified. These are called box cabs, if you will. So as time goes on or went on, you're going to find that they were very, very sought after, and what they needed to do was to make them less expensive so that more children could play with this stuff. A lot of these things were actually auctioned off. Victorian homes especially has been my experience, but larger homes, they were kept by the families that had them, and then as time went on, the entire look of it changed. So a lot of this stuff came out of attics that had been stored away for some time, and then went to auction. And auction was the way that most of this stuff was brought in for sale at that time. Antique auctions, the furniture, the trains, just about everything in the house that went to auction.
All right, I think we're going over the time here.
Okay.
And Train Mom is rushing us out of here, so we got to wrap this up. So that'll be it for this one, and next time we'll bring another set, maybe the next series where they went to from here, and discuss some of that.
Absolutely. We'll actually go through by calendar year.
Okay.
And see how it's developed all the way into today's models.
Okay. That is Brad from what?
We'll say Off the Rails.
Okay, great.
Good to see you.
Yep.